Hey everyone, welcome back to the Woods Collab Podcast. This is
Nikisha Woods.
And I'm Mike Woods.
The introduction. My gosh.
Love it. We're the hosts of the Woods Collab Podcast. Before we get going, please make sure you like, subscribe, share with your personal, professional network. And that's going to be the buzzword today because we're going to talk about networking. What are some tips that we can do to leverage our network, to build a network, take advantage of the network, give to our network, receive from our network, and all that good stuff?
Oh, you said network like 16 times already.
I said it. That's a buzz. So why don't you go ahead and tell the people what is networking? What do you think about it?
Oh, wow. So network, when I think about it, I think about who you surround yourself with, right? But I also think it's a little bit more strategic than just the people you grew up with or the people, you know, that are in your family and things like that. You're branching outside of it because although your family members are in your network, when you think about your professional network, it starts to expand. And so it's just like being intentional about the people that you surround yourselves with that you're making sure that you are meeting your own personal professional goals. Is that your thought?
I love it. I agree. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned a key word there. You said you're branching out. Mm-hmm. You're branching out. So that means that there's some action associated with it. Or there could be some action because you could build a network and it might have a slower pace by simply existing. But if you're intentionally branching out, going after relationships, connections, that sort of thing, that action, that effort could work to your advantage. So when you say branch out, you want to get into some things that we can do to branch out?
Yeah. So I think that before we get into those things that we can do to branch out, just really thinking about like who naturally shows up in your space. Right. So I kind of touched on it a minute ago, but you have people you grew up with, you have friends, you have family, you have people you rock with. Right. But I think that there's a moment in time for all of us as we become a particular age where we start to evaluate the people that we surround ourselves with. Right. Are the people that I'm surrounding myself with, although you may love them dearly, are they bringing value? Right. Are they bringing the right energy? Or are there things that maybe in my youth that I tolerated a little bit more or I just went with or rolled with as I was trying to figure out my own goals and what I wanted? And are they adding towards those things or are they taking away from them? And so I think that, if you have people in your circle, just by naturally being in your circle from years of life and being a human on this earth, I think that it's really important to think about if they're here for a season, if they're here for a reason, or if they're here for a lifetime. And I remember I heard that not too long ago, but it really helped me to put things in perspective because people are here for a reason and they're in your circle for a reason. But sometimes people are in your circle just for a season. Oh my gosh, I sound like I'm either rapping or preaching. I don't know which one.
Right.
But sometimes people are in your life just for a moment in time. And sometimes they're in there to teach you a lesson, to add value in a particular way. And then that's just what it is. And then you have other folks who, like you, they're in your life for a lifetime, right? And so really just taking that moment, I think it naturally happens for most of us when we take that stop and pause and say, okay, you know what? I'm not dealing with the drama today. I'm not really about to rock with this person. I'm not feeling it. Like, I feel like they're hating on me or they're jealous or there's competition and it's not in a healthy way. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's you have to protect your space. You have to protect your space and also think about the investment of your space. So we talk about the drama or something that's unhealthy. You have to protect that energy because it requires work. And you talked about the branching off and the things that we have to do. It requires to work when you're dealing with certain things that doesn't align up with where you're going. So you have to protect that and say, hey, is this something that I want to deal with? Yeah. And if the answer is yes, by all means, power to you, go forward. Yeah. But if the answer is like, this is going to deter me from something else or even put me in a mindset where it's counterproductive, you got to protect that. And then the part where you also have to invest in your space, that's a piece where you say, okay, well, maybe I'm going to do something different. Maybe I'm going to read. Maybe I'm going to meditate. Maybe I'm going to pray. Maybe I'm going to talk to somebody that's in the circle that's going to be adding value to it. So that's investing in it. Because it's that investing, going after, going to get, or also existing, where like you said, is kind of like letting things come to you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So as we figure out if a person is in our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and we're starting to be a little bit more intentional about who's in our circle, who's in our ear, right? Who's that voice that we're listening to the loudest? What are your thoughts on how do you make decisions around if there is a person that's in your circle that is noisy or creating problems or drama? What does that look like to protect your mental space or protect your time and your energy? Like, what does that look like? And I know it's not easy because we have these emotional connections to folks.
Right.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's something where it could be a challenging process, or it could be a very easy process, depending on how the individual who is impacted and the others, how they're wired. So for one, it comes with awareness.
Yeah.
So you got to think about, like if I'm talking to somebody and say, hey, this after I have this conversation, I'm in a bad place. You got to be aware of that, and sometimes it takes a minute to just pause and reflect. Yeah. And kind of like, I know we've talked about triggers before, and say, okay, wow, after I got out of this meeting or this phone call, I was in a bad space. So you could go in the moment and look back and say, wow, this was a crappy day.
Yeah.
Because you never checked that particular moment. But it comes with that awareness. I think that's the first space. Say, hey, let me make sure I'm aware of how my interactions are with this person and how I feel as a result of it. So that's a huge thing, is first having that awareness. Two, I think you also have to I think some things are worth calling out.
Yeah.
So like, let's say if you're interacting with someone and you say, hey, I'm in that bad spot, that may be worthy of a conversation. Hey, heads up, this is a direction I'm not looking to go.
Yeah.
And you got to call it out and kind of stop in a moment, because we could easily get caught up. And of course, with this day and age, we look at the world 30 years ago. There's access now.
All access.
It's all access. So
yes,
you can get somebody could hit you up on social
ghost
media.
People the same way you used to ghost.
It's not the same. It's not the same. You text, social media, calls. It's that instant access. And sometimes you may have to cut that access down, kind of shut that access off. But I think the main thing is just goes back to that awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's usually clues involved, right? There's that tugging, right? If you're noticing that you're in communication with someone, and no matter how positive what you're saying and your feeling is, they got something negative to say about it, right? Yeah. Or they deflect the energy and attention to themselves, right? Or if they, it's something that you're proud of or you're excited about, and they're not a part of those moments, then that is, I mean, if at some points, if they're not rooting for you, they're rooting against you. And then you have to take a pause of, is this investment in this relationship the investment that I need to have? And so I think that, we talk about and being intentional. I feel like that's like our theme, right?
Yeah. It comes up a lot.
Yeah. Know your goals and be intentional is like a big piece. And so I really feel that just going back to being intentional, if you can roll with it and be cool with it and it's not a problem, then that's you. But for me, I do like to protect my mental space and the energy that I'm around, because I got things to do.
Yeah, because like you mentioned with that season spot, there could be that particular season where you're dealing with that tough interaction with that person, and that could just be what it is, because maybe there's a need there on both sides, but that could be that season. But there's also a pocket where you're like, hey, you know what? Enough is enough. Yeah. This is too taxing on my well-being, on my mental state, on my physical state, and you might have to make that call to cut that thing off or transition in a certain fashion. So when we talk about, with the networking space and how impactful that circle is, what you allow in that circle, how you're investing in that circle is very important.
For sure.
So when we take that and we apply it on a professional scale, so with conducting business and depending on where we are in our careers and that sort of thing, how do we take that, maybe this is something I need to cut off, in the workplace, or when you're dealing with business, because there could be, it may not appear to be as controlled. Because personally, I can say, hey, block, delete,
unfriend,
not pick up the phone.
Yeah.
But sometimes in business, depending on how that structure is set up, it may not be that easy. Because you're in a spot where you have a job to do, but you still have that interaction that exists.
Right.
So now you're dealing with that. So how do you do that? Let's call it that cutoff, or that reassessment, or that self-aware play when you're talking about business.
Well, I do think that there's an awareness factor, like you already brought up, right? There's that awareness piece. And I think that not only being aware of how this person makes you feel, but the impact that person makes when they're on the team, when they come around, when they're in an environment. And if you're finding that the energy that they're producing is not productive and it doesn't make a huge impact, I've done it where I've given that person feedback, right? Because we talked a lot about feedback in our podcast and providing that in a professional setting to say, hey, listen, there's that spinach in your teeth, right? There's that thing. This is what I'm noticing, you know, you could take it or leave it, but I'm gonna tell you, right? Because now you're impeding on my energy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you know. But, you know, if that person decides that that's not, you know, that who's authentic to them is to maybe complain about a lot of things, or to express, you know, problems without solutions and things like that, then I think that it's fine to distance yourself. Now in leadership, that's a little bit different. Now in leadership, it's more of you're coaching someone up, right? You're coaching them to understand the impact that they're making. And so it really depends on where you fall. So it could be a teammate that you have to work on a project, you provide that feedback, or it could be someone that you're coaching up as one of your team members, and you're really focused on what can I do to help this person to be the best version of themselves, i.e. the spinach in the teeth reference. So it is a little bit trickier when you're working in close proximity with people, and you can't just unfriend them because you got to go to work.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important to be aware of it, because you spend more time at work than you do with your family members. Hello, right? Like, you're at work 40 hours a week, sometimes longer. And so if you're going in a space where somebody is just constantly dragging you down, or just giving you negative advice or opinions and not focused on solutions, that's going to impact you as a person.
Yeah, and that's where that could be the waters to, you know, in trading, that could be very challenging. So even flipping back to that whole circle piece, because the purpose of the circle could be to help to hold you accountable, and of course to, you know, a space that you can leverage. So like, even when you're in those moments, leverage that circle to run those scenarios by. So when you talk about networking, you might have somebody who in your circle or in your network that's done or has dealt with a situation like that before. And that could be like, hey, you know what? I have this business relationship that I have some challenging times with. Hey, circle, hey, network, have anybody else experienced this before? Oh, really? You have? Okay, cool. What did you do about it? Oh, you did that? Okay, kid, maybe I'll try that piece. What did you do about it? Oh, cool, great. Thanks for the advice. And then you could take that and you can apply it. So that's where you have that accountability, that sort of guidance that you could leverage. Also, when you're talking about that circle, that network, you can use that for growth opportunities. As far as like, hey, I have a connection. You know, I may have some type of connection, and you still have to put in the work. But maybe you could knock on that door for some information. Say, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity or a partnership that I'm thinking about exploring.
Yeah.
Network. Can you help me out here? Can you give some type of guidance?
Yeah.
So have you had to use that before? As far as like lean on your network for that?
Oh, for sure. Because I think that the misconception about people, your leader, is that your leader is always going to be the one to give you the guidance you need to grow.
Yeah.
Right?
That's definitely a yeah, your leader can and will and should.
Yeah.
But not the sole person responsible of that.
Yes.
That's key.
Yeah. And so for me, I found that, you know, I'm like, hey leader, what can I do? What can I do? How can I get better? What do I need to do? What do I need to change? And then you get that keep doing what you're doing feedback. And you're like, well, clearly, I'm not amazing all the time, which I am, right? Right, husband? You have to say that.
Absolutely.
Except when I'm hungry, right?
Yes.
So you might, your leader might run into a wall where they even, run out of ways to develop you. They're not quite sure what those things are.
And those happen because we do, right? For sure.
Yeah. So I think that's when you're probably most vulnerable to, okay, I need something, right? I'm hungry for something because I don't know what my next career move is. I don't know what my next thing is, but I know I want to change and I don't know what it looks like. So then that's where I personally have reached out to people and just said, hey, can I just talk to you for a minute, right? Can we chat? Can I just tell you the situation and hear your perspective of what I could do? And honestly, we are networking with each other all of the time.
I'll tell you,
every day. It's our start the morning. It's our debrief from the day. And then it's like, is it me or how can I handle this situation? And I trust your perspective and your opinion so that I know that you're going to tell me like, babe, why did you do that?
Right.
And it doesn't always feel good.
Yeah.
But I know that it is real because you know me inside and outside of work. You know who I am. So I would definitely say, be curious and hungry and invest in yourself enough where you're willing to ask questions of people that you respect, people that you admire, and people that you know will tell you the truth.
Exactly. And that's textbook building your network, leveraging your network. I had a conversation. This was just Friday. A former leader of mine had a conversation, and we talked about, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? What's your journey been like as of late? And it was a 30-minute conversation, but just sharing thoughts and sharing ideas. But that's one thing that we definitely can take advantage of is just getting, like you said, getting the perspective of one that is not your own.
Yeah.
It's like you said, you'll talk to me and you're going to get my perspective. But there's also a time where you may not agree with my perspective, but at least you may see it from that lens.
Yeah.
But then you also get the perspective of somebody else that may have a different lens. And that's how you all get better. Then when you hear those things, it's not just, okay, cool, yep, I'm going to apply A, B, and C.
Yeah.
You take A, B, and C, assess it, maybe you give it a try. And some you might be like, hey, I'm going to take a look at A. B, I'm going to put that on the back burner for a while. But C, okay, yeah, maybe let me look into that a little bit more. But it's giving you more information to help set you up for success.
For sure. Yeah. So I do know when you say more information to set you up for success, in my experiences with networking, sometimes you're communicating with an individual and just being curious and hungry and wanting to grow yourself. And then that can open doors for you in the future.
Right.
And so if you wouldn't mind sharing your experience with getting into the current industry that you're in and being in a position where you didn't have a job a few years ago, several years ago. You want to share that experience?
Yeah, sure. That was, so my introduction to the mortgage, the financial services industry was back in, this was about what, 2003?
Yes.
It's about 2003. So we're talking about networking. So
can I just say one little part?
Please.
So when I met Mike,
he didn't
have a job.
Let's
put that out there. It was, he lost his job.
Now look at me.
Listen. He was laid off the day before we met. So, you have that awkward conversation of, oh, so what do you do? And it was like, well, actually. So anyway, I just had to throw that in there.
What do you do? It worked. We'll say that. We'll say that for another podcast. That's funny. So that was a situation. So I was in a spot then where I didn't, and this was my introduction into the the mortgage services financial industry. So what I was doing, so this is a part of network. So make sure you all take this. There's value in being willing and being vulnerable to share your experience. That's another thing that we can leverage when it comes to networking, sharing the space that you're in, sharing what you have going on. So what I was doing then, I was in the hunt looking for a job, and then I was actually speaking at a church. Okay. I was speaking. I was, sharing a story, and in that, I told what I was going through in that moment. It's like, hey, I'm on a hunt. I say I'm willing, I'm capable, I need a job.
So what was? I'm sorry, just to paint a picture because I honestly forgot the story.
Yeah. So, it was a minute ago.
So were you speaking on something else, or did you just get up in front of the pulpit and just like, listen, I need a job, like Keisha owe me? Like,
no,
you paint a picture of like, were you there to preach about something, speak on something, and then that just kind of like came up?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the topic was, but I was sharing what I was going through in the moment.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was going through in the moment was I was on this job hunt. But I know last time we talked about resilience and endurance and all those things, and I was telling where I was in the moment. I was in a good space mentally, but I was sharing, I was being vulnerable as to where I was. Yeah. I did not have a job. My uncle and I were at the time, we were, and shout out to the legacy of my Uncle Daryl. We were actually going out doing side jobs, but I didn't have a job. I had a job, but not a job. So shout out for Uncle Daryl for introducing me to that, and I had that work ethic there. So I was looking to build a career. I was looking to get into a career. So in that, I was there at the church, and I was sharing my story. I was sharing my testimony. I was sharing being vulnerable as to what I was going through in that moment. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, I was networking, because after that, I was approached by someone that said, hey, you have a resume. By all means, I sure do have a resume. And in that, I went out for a position, and it was so interesting because I went out for a position, interviewed for the position. Shortly thereafter, I got a letter. I still have that letter upstairs. I got a letter. They were like, thanks, but no thanks. I took the letter, I balled it up, and I threw it away.
Yeah, we were on the phone when you balled it up and threw it away.
Were we? We were on the phone.
Yeah.
Yep. I was like, okay, you know what? I've been there before. I balled it up. I threw it away. I was like, okay, cool. On to the next one. I'm going. I'm not tripping over it or anything. But I threw it away. It's like, hey, another one down. The next one must be closer. That same company, that same firm called me the same day. It was like, hey, you still in the market? By all means, yes, I am in the market. So to take that back to that thing I want to make sure that we walk away with is to, and this doesn't mean share everything. Of course, you cannot share everything with everybody. There's some things that's, just for you and maybe just for your circle. But there is power in that vulnerability. If I don't share that story of what I'm going through or the assistance or help I need, perhaps I don't get that opportunity.
Yeah.
But simply by me being honest with, hey, this is what's going on, this is what I'm looking for. Somebody approached me, heard it, and they were able to make a difference and able to provide an introduction. And then rest assured, been in that industry for how many years is that? Quite a few
18?
years later.
18.
Quite a few years later. Yeah. So that vulnerability, I was able to take that, and without even being intentional in that moment, I was being intentional with the vulnerability, but I didn't know what type of opportunity would open up in that.
Yeah.
It worked to my advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I can relate to that for sure, because I have, and maybe I learned from that with you, right? But I have been in positions where I'm like, you know what? I don't know what to do, so I need to phone a friend. Yep. And if we're not friends now, we will be, because we're going to network and we're going to get to know each other. And so in those moments, I didn't just set up a meeting and just say, hey, how's it going? How's the weather? Small talk is, it's definitely a skill set I have, but it's not my first thing. And that was some of the great feedback that I received, because I do consider myself to be an introvert. We debate on that all the time. Not all introverts are shy. So I do consider myself to be an introvert. And that was one of the things that I talked to somebody that I reached out to, was about the fact that I felt very awkward and very uncomfortable networking. And I felt like people who are more extroverted and the people who are more rah-rah in your face had more opportunities. And so the person that I reached out to had a lot of experience, had a pretty high title, and had been around the organization for a long period of time. And that person helped me realize that I don't have to show up in spaces like everyone else to make an impact and to be authentically who I am. I'm going to have to be authentically who I am as I am. And so for me, that one of those biggest takeaways from that conversation, it was a random conversation. I'd only talked to this person in passing, was that I find my strength in more meaningful conversations. I am able to be who I am in more meaningful conversations. And so instead of beating myself up because I don't know how to chit chat about the weather for 20 minutes like some people can do, or that I'm a little bit more private or reserved and take a step back in situations, when I am comfortable, find what I'm comfortable sharing, and when I am comfortable connecting with people in a way that's authentic to me, instead of trying to look like what I thought was the popular thing or the thing that opened the most doors. And so I had to really rewrite what networking looked like, because keep in mind, one of the reasons I reached out to this person was because I wasn't great at networking. I felt like I'm bothering someone, or they have other things to do, or I'm not bringing any value to this conversation. I'm only looking to them to give me feedback and advice, or how do I keep up the conversation in the networking, right? It's great in the moment, but 6 months later, if I have a question, do I feel comfortable calling you, asking you what you think? And so that was my biggest area of opportunity, or my biggest obstacle for networking, is that I would get in my own way and I would get in my own head. And then I wasn't able to make the connections, which I feel like you're great at that. I feel like,
well, thank you.
Like, thank you, question mark.
No, because that's important for us to know. There's different styles, there's different approaches, there's different strategies in going about that. So I want to make sure everybody is clear. There's different ways. Just like you say, your way, I may not try it that way. I may want to chit chat a little bit longer. And you might be like, hey, let's get straight to this. Here's what this is about. Yes. What do I need to do? Yeah. I might say, hey, cool. And
you talk about the weather, and then you can talk. You got these random jokes, and I'm sitting there like, I ain't got no more jokes.
Right. It's knowing yourself and knowing the environment, knowing the person, and that's all okay, because it's presented in different forms. Yeah. We may hear that, hey, golf course, or go to a gym, go play basketball, or just maybe pick up a phone call, maybe do something over the computer where you meet with somebody. It could be just kind of, linking up for coffee, whatever the case may be. There's different forms in fashion, and sometimes that conversation goes long. Sometimes it's a short conversation where you may connect and you meet for 5-10 minutes and you got exactly what you need out of that. And then that conversation is over until the next time. Well, there's people that, we both converse with and network with, but maybe we maybe have not talked to them in a year or two. But rest assured, when it's that time to go back and build that relationship, or not build the relationship, but tap into that network, we've already set the foundation for it. So I want everybody to make sure hey, it looks in different ways, but self-awareness. You got to know what works for us, and what are we looking to get out of it.
Yeah. And I think that is getting out of your own way and out of your own head, and thinking that it is, I made this big production of it, right? I made this production of, okay, so I have to meet with this person and they're probably busy, but I'm going to schedule this time. And then what do I talk about?
Right.
And then, what if I need something in the future and they're not there, or they can't answer it, or they don't want to answer it, or if I'm bothering them. And so I went through this whole thing, and it was like, I have to have a mentor, and the mentor, we have to meet once a month. And it was like, I was getting so far in my head that I couldn't necessarily focus on just finding somebody that you connect with, and not only thinking about what can they give me, because I feel like that's a selfish way to approach networking.
Yeah.
It's fine if that's where you start, but I think that as you evolve in how you network, it is, can I have an impactful exchange with this person? Can I learn something along the way? And being confident enough in yourself to know that you are also bringing something to this conversation.
Yeah.
Now, you might not know what it is when you meet with that person. You might not quite be able to pinpoint it, but have enough confidence and awareness of what your skill set is to know that even if you're only spending 30 minutes with this other person, it's still a value add for them. And so that, I think that takes the hierarchy out.
Yeah.
You're not thinking so much about their title or their experience or their tenure, but you're thinking about two people getting together to be thought leaders and to provoke different ideas.
Yes. And then you said find someone you could connect with. And even if you're just starting to invest in building out that circle or building out that network, you may take a minute to try to or look to see if someone is someone that you connect with. But you may be looking at someone across the pond and say, that's something I connect with. Let me set up some time to chat.
Yeah.
Or you might say, well, I don't know if I connect with that person. But still, you can set up that initial time to chat.
Yeah.
Because it could be a case where you're like, you know what? Maybe that's not the play. And then you move on. Or sometimes that person that you don't connect with, that could be the person that you need to connect with.
Yep.
Because that person is wired and sees things totally different than you do. And then you all can kind of build from there as well. But it doesn't happen unless you take that step. When we talked about branching out, take that step to invest in the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and then a diversity of thought is so important because if you watched our podcast, you know that Michael and I are very different.
a little bit.
We are a little bit different, right? And so what I do like about you is in the moment I might not understand where you're coming from, but I respect where you're coming from.
Thank you.
That's a different perspective than I have. And so I think that of course, you know, if you're familiar with the like me bias and things like that, we naturally gravitate towards people who are like us. The affinity bias is also called. So we're naturally gravitating towards those people. But sometimes those people are going to say the exact same thing you're saying to yourself. And then you're like, well, I wonder why I'm stagnant. I wonder why I'm in the same spot versus being around people who think a little bit different, who move a little bit different. So I definitely say branch out, make sure that you have the diversity of thought, just to piggyback off what you said.
Yeah, that's real too. And then finding ways to lean into being challenged.
Yeah.
That's good network. I think you nailed it. If you got a network that's looks the same, thinks the same, goes about things the same, that's a network that's the same. What about an opportunity where nobody's looking over there because everybody's looking at it the same? So another good tactic is to, lean into being challenged. I'm personally a fan of that challenge. When I get caught out, because it gives the opportunity, like, okay,
I call you out.
Well, but it is real because it's one that's sharing a different perspective. Because I can look at it. This is one of my, I would say one of my favorite quotes. I'm not sure who coined. I don't know if maybe I coined it. Maybe I didn't. I don't want to take credit for who did.
People can Google it.
Maybe I did. I don't know. But it goes back to being your authentic self. You talked about authenticity. Being your authentic self, yet checking your authentic self. And then there's another layer. I'm about to coin this third layer though. Is being checked of your authentic self.
Okay.
So you can be your authentic self.
Okay.
Check your authentic self. So that's yourself doing the checking.
Yeah.
But also being checked based on your authentic self.
Getting that
feedback, being challenged. And that's how you kind of build that network as well. If you got a network, that circle that's going to call you out. And this isn't, the circle don't have to be somebody that's on the phone all day. Say, hey, all right, cool. What's the game plan for the day? But accessible when you need.
Yeah.
Someone you can leverage, someone you can tap into. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think too, like, it's not even, like I said, I thought it had to be once a month. And if I go a year or 2 years or 3 years, it's just awkward at this point. So I'm not going to bother them. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, and that's still something I work on because I am very conscious of the fact that I don't want to bother anybody, that type of thing. But if you have that impactful interaction, if you have those memorable moments, if you're going to that place of vulnerability, they're going to remember you as a person, right? And they're going to care enough for you as a person and be invested enough that if you do call them 3 years later, they're going to pick up the phone. And guess what? If they're not picking up the phone, then maybe they were just there for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? Or a season, right? Going back to that, tying those threads.
Yeah. So we were this was just yesterday. We're out and about.
Yep.
Buying some smell good for both of us, getting right. And saw somebody who I work with professionally. Now that was an easy moment to be like, yeah, we about to go over here and act as if I didn't see that person. But we stopped.
Who's ever done that before? You saw someone that and kind of like go out the other way.
I've done it before.
We've all done it, right?
Yeah. But in most cases, I'm like, hey, what's up? What you doing? What you got going on? Depending on the space you're in. But we stopped and we had a conversation. We all talked. We all have a conversation. And to a point, that's a form of networking.
Yeah.
Hey, I see you. Hey, how's it going? This, that, and the other. And who knows? We may cross paths down the line. But guess what? We just had a conversation, and maybe we can kind of build on that.
Yeah, I think it's just making an impression.
Making an impression, that's good.
You're making an impression, and you made an impression with that person when you were there at church to talk about only God knows what, because you don't remember what you were there to talk about. But you made an impression on a person that spoke to them, that said, hey, when there's this opportunity, where there's this thing, where there's this situation, I'm going to think about this person. And so I mentioned that I reached out to a few people just to pick their brain, just to share, just to exchange thoughts. And it might feel a little awkward at first, but there's been times where that person has remembered me for opportunities that I didn't even apply for, and was like, hey, you know Keisha Woods? Like, you need to know Keisha Woods. And I wasn't even there to advocate for myself, but that person, I connected with that person on a deep enough level where they advocated for me and helped me to actually go into the current position that I'm in right now. So you just never know when you're planting a seed that's going to actually blossom into something, but really being present in the moment with the person that you're interacting with, and that can take you into new spaces. Yes.
So I like that you said that seed planting. So let's bring this thing home. Let's bring this thing home. So let's talk about, let's leave the people with some tangible things that we could do within our network. You're talking about planting the seed. So what can we take and what can we walk away with to build that network, to grow that network, and what can we do within that network?
So we're gonna have to make a hashtag on this one, but
let's go. Hashtag time.
You gotta support other people if you want support. Say that again for the people in the back. You have to support other people if you want support. And so if you have someone in your network that you're not supporting them, you're not going to their events, you're not liking their posts, you're not actively engaged to some degree, right? You have to, of course, do what makes sense and what's authentic to you. But if you're not actively supporting other people, how do you expect other people to actively support you? Support, yep. Right? So definitely, and we talked about being value add. So that way you're making sure that you're also a value add. You're not just draining the energy of someone else, but you're being a part of their growth, their journey, their experience, their business, whatever that looks like. So I would definitely say that's one of the things that come to mind. What about you?
I'm gonna flip these two. Is access and be accessible.
Okay.
Access and be accessible. So just to make sure that you are within the network, that you are, it kind of ties in with supporting, accessing, reaching out, leveraging. Because you never know, you may be reaching out to someone for something and you've left an impression on that person, even though you may have come in to get something out of it. So make sure you're reaching out to access people, to make sure those connections are there. And then also being accessible. So you have to watch this as well. Of course, we started off talking about how there's times where situations or people in a particular moment, depending on what it is, it could be draining. So you got to watch that. So that doesn't mean stay accessible, but at the same time, if you're in a position where you can help somebody, you're in a space where you can help somebody, be accessible. So it kind of what goes along with, what you said about supporting. But if you're in a position where you can help somebody, you can share that story, but you never help or you never share that story, that could impact that network or that relationship as a whole.
And I also want people to know that we're not saying that it's easy. I feel like for you as a natural extrovert, you're going to stand in Bath and Body Works and you're going to chop it up and be really present. And that's the thing, because you just gain your energy from people. But I would say if it's difficult, if it's awkward, if it's uncomfortable, sometimes you have to do what's uncomfortable in order to grow, right? If you think about stretching or flexing or, exercising a muscle, it's all discomfort in the moment, but it gets you better and gets you the gains that you're looking for in the future. And so it's going to be times where you just have to just say, you know what? This person really spoke to me. I'm curious to know more about their journey. I'm going to send a message. And if they don't respond, then that wasn't meant to be. But if they do respond, what is the win and what is the gain as a result of it? And have that courage enough and that confidence enough in yourself to know that it's going to be a valuable conversation because you're in the room and you're in the space. So it's a lot of pushing through. It might even be a accountability buddy at first that says, hey, this person really spoke to me. Mike Woods is really speaking to me on the Woods collab post. I want to reach out to him. Hold me accountable to reaching out to him, even if it is a message or even if it is a call or something like that. Like, how can we hold each other accountable, but really finding ways to like build up that courage and build that strength so that you can do that. Because it's not always easy.
That's true. That's true. That's good.
It's good stuff.
That's good and that's real. So the why behind this, we talked about this before. This is one of the anchors in our podcast. Think about what those goals are. Like, if your goals are to do a thing, whatever that thing is, think about how networking can help to expedite you accomplishing that, or to make that pursuit that much more efficient for you.
Yeah.
Just think, like, really we talk about self-awareness. Be aware if you are perhaps maybe even missing out on some opportunities because of your perspective with networking.
Yeah.
Think about how you can really take advantage of it. Depends on what your goals are.
Yep.
You think about an interview. We talked about that position I had years ago.
Yeah.
I still had to go out and interview. I still had to go out and do something. I had to say, hey, here's my credentials. Here's what I'm interested in. Vulnerability. Got that letter. It was like, nope. But that's okay. Think about networking in a similar fashion. Just reach out to someone and say, hey, you know what? I'm curious about this thing because here are some goals. It may work to your advantage. Maybe it does not work to your advantage, but at least you maybe have that rep to say, hey, I took the action to reach out. So think about what those goals are. Think about how you can leverage networking to your advantage, how you can leverage building that circle, so that you could give to that circle, so that you could receive for that circle, so that you could help others depending on what those goals are.
Yeah.
Got anything else?
No, I think this has been great. Networking is definitely something that I think we have, lots of people have talked about the importance of it, but without tactics or best practices or just hearing real talk about how it can be difficult at times. How do you move forward and how do you make that thing happen? And so we love to hear from you. Definitely, for sure. Go ahead and comment, like, subscribe, do all those things, but we do want to hear from you, hear your voice. What are some of your pain points with networking still, even after hearing us talk today? What are some goals that you have when it comes to networking? We'd love to hear from you, so please, again, comment, like, and subscribe. So I'm going to do this to Mike this time to know what it feels like. So I'm Nikisha Woods. This is...
Keisha Woods.
No.
I'm Mike Woods.
And we are the Woods Collab. Thank you so much for tuning in.